On tonight's summary of the Israel-Hamas War, day 217. Hostage negotiations broken down. All parties have left Cairo. Hamas and Israel blame each other for not accepting revised proposals. Barrages of rockets fired from the Gaza Strip target the southern Israeli town of Be'er Sheva, signaling the largest barrage fired from Gaza in the past 5 months. As fighting continues in southeastern Rafah, Hamas sources state that the movement plans on intensifying its fighting in the northern parts of the Strip. Major escalations between Israel and Hezbollah. Barrages of rockets caused massive fires in northern Israel. The IDF assassinated Hezbollah operatives in the Lebanese town of Tzor. United Nations approves the upgrade of the Palestinian delegation to a near-state status, granting it nearly all the powers of a member state except the right to vote in the UN. Hello everyone. I am Alon Burstein, visiting assistant professor in the Department of Political Science and Israel Institute fellow at the University of California, Irvine, here to bring you the latest highlights from the Israel-Hamas War. It is currently the evening of May 10th, 2024 in the United States, the morning of May 11th, 2024 in the Middle East. Starting with the hostage situation, the negotiations have officially broken down in the last several days. The different parties have left the negotiating table in Cairo on May 9th. CNN reported that Hamas's last round of corrections to the ongoing negotiations extended the first phase of the truce to 12 weeks instead of 6 weeks, and Israel was not prepared to negotiate those terms, leading to the breakdown. The Saudi Asharic news site also reported that Israel insisted on reverting to the original deal of returning 33 live hostages in the first phase of the deal, rather than Hamas's second version that stated live or dead hostages, which also contributed to Hamas walking out on the deal, saying they're not prepared to add any more revisions. In addition to these disagreements, the New York Times reported on May 9th that both Egypt and Hamas were furious with the IDF's operation in Rafah and its advances after Hamas stated its willingness to accept the deal on May 6th. According to the New York Times, the anger that was in the room led the sides to abandon the negotiations. However, it is important to note that the negotiations did actually continue several days after that operation continued into Rafah. Only on May 9th did they actually break down. In addition, while Arabi al-Jadid reported on May 9th that Qatar is trying to reignite the talks between the sides in the coming days, the United States also recognized publicly on May 10th that no active negotiations are currently taking place either in Egypt or in Qatar. Amidst all this, on May 10th, both sides were pretty much busy blaming the other one for the fact that negotiations have broken down. Hamas put out an announcement stating that the leadership is going to consult with the other factions of the Palestinian movement and rethink the negotiation strategy in light of the deadlock. Hamas stated that Israel is rejecting the deal in order to create a pretense to invade Rafah. Similarly, later in the day, Khalil al-Haya, who is Yahya Sinwar's deputy and one of Hamas's chief negotiators, also put out a statement stating that Hamas did not walk away from the talks, but that Israel rejected the negotiations because it wants to continue the war. Similarly, in Israel, the Israeli government continuously said throughout May 10th that Hamas is the one that constantly changed the terms of the deal, and that Israel was prepared to be flexible on almost all counts, as the United States acknowledged as well. However, Hamas ended up giving counter-offers that were unreasonable as far as Israel was concerned, and that is the result of the breakdown. Either way, as of now, there are no active negotiations going on. As I stated, in one of the reports, Qatar said it is going to try to reignite the talks in the coming days. Remains to be seen if and how that happens. Moving on to the situation in the Gaza Strip. For the first time since December, on May 10th, there were 2 barrages of over 14 rockets that were fired from the Gaza Strip, targeting the Israeli southern town of Be'er Sheva. One barrage was launched from Rafah, and the launching site was later destroyed by the IDF, and another was launched from the central parts of the Gaza Strip. Several of these rockets were intercepted. However, major damage was caused to a few houses in the city of Be'er Sheva, and one of the rockets hit a playground in the city. In addition, other rockets were also fired towards the areas of Eshkol, and mortars were fired towards Kerem Shalom. In addition to this, on May 9th, an unidentified object, I will add likely a drone, however this was not reported, it was reported there was an unidentified object, was seen being launched from the Gaza Strip before it crashed outside the area of Netivot. Moving on to the fighting in the Gaza Strip. In the northern parts of the Gaza Strip, on May 9th, the IDF launched an operation in the Zaytun area. This is the southern parts of Gaza City. This is the third operation that the IDF is carrying out in the city, the second operation since the end of the major IDF invasion to the northern parts of the Gaza Strip that ended in December of 2023. The IDF stated that the operation is aimed at destroying Hamas's attempt to rebuild itself in the area, and that it will last several days. On the first day of the operation, 25 bombings and strikes were reported throughout the area of Zaytun. Several high-profile attacks were also noted against different Hamas operatives. However, the identity of these people was not given, and there was also very intensive fighting that was reported on the second day. Amidst this ongoing fighting, on May 10th, there was a series of explosives that were reportedly detonated in an alley that IDF soldiers were storming in the area of Zaytun, killing 4 IDF soldiers and injuring others. Amidst this ongoing fighting in Gaza City, the Israeli Haaretz news site quoted Palestinian sources on May 10th, stating that Hamas is planning on intensifying the fighting in the northern parts of the Gaza Strip, and specifically in Gaza City, in the coming days, as a message to Israel that even after 7 months of war, Hamas still has fighting capabilities in the northern parts of the Strip. According to the Palestinian sources who were quoted, this is meant to be a signal to the IDF and to the world with regard to the IDF's intentions to invade Rafah, trying to show that no matter what the IDF does, it cannot actually stomp out the Hamas fighting units in the different areas. Related to the fighting in Rafah in the southern parts of the Gaza Strip, fighting has continued in the southeastern parts of Rafah. Al-Qassam brigades reported detonating a rigged tunnel entrance as IDF soldiers were entering it in order to search the tunnel. The IDF later confirmed this, stating that 3 soldiers were injured. In addition, there were substantial gun battles that were reported throughout the region, and the IDF is continuing to solidify its control of the city. According to some reports, IDF tanks have created a buffer zone cutting off the southeastern parts of the city and encircling it from all sides. This is a tactic that the IDF carried out when it was invading Khan Yunis. It first invaded the outskirts of a city, then surrounded it with tanks before actually invading the entrance, the heart of the city. In this case, we were talking about the southeastern parts of Rafah, so it is possible that same tactic is being carried out there. Again, at this point, those are reports on the ground. They're unconfirmed by the IDF or by other sources other than eyewitnesses. However, that does match the tactics that the IDF has used in the past. In addition to this, there was substantial artillery fire that was reported in the Abbasan region. This is the eastern parts of Khan Yunis. There's no active fighting that is reported in that area, only those barrages of artillery fire. Other news related to the Rafah invasion, and specifically to the U.S. pressure on Israel to not carry out a large-scale invasion. After U.S. President Joe Biden stated on May 8th that the U.S. will consider pausing the transfer of offensive weapons to Israel if Israel carries out a full invasion into Rafah, Reuters reported on May 9th that Biden's decision is linked to the ultimatum he issued to the Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu already on April 4th, stating that Israel has to factor in aid workers and civilians in a much more concrete way, otherwise weapons transfers from the United States to Israel may be held up. Both Reuters and the Wall Street Journal quoted sources stating that Biden did not want to make the ultimatum public. However, Israel reported publicly that a weapons shipment was being held up, which was supposed to be a signal by the United States that it is making good on its ultimatum. Once that was made public in Israel and the administration was asked about it, the administration decided to go public with that ultimatum. On May 10th, the focus of the administration shifted a bit. National Security Council spokesperson John Kirby stated that the U.S. never told Israel it cannot destroy the Hamas battalions in Rafah, but rather that the way this is done is what matters, and the U.S. will not support a large-scale invasion. This is relating to the different rhetoric in the United States. Over the last several months, the U.S. has escalated its rhetoric from saying that it is not sure that Israel can carry out a Rafah invasion, to it wants to see the plans before Israel carries out that invasion, to blatantly stating that it thinks the invasion would be a mistake and will not serve Israel's interests. Right now, the administration is somewhere in the middle, saying on the one hand it did not tell Israel that it cannot destroy the Hamas battalions, however it does not want Israel to carry out that invasion. Meanwhile, amidst reports of a massive IDF buildup of tanks and armored divisions around the Gaza Strip in anticipation of the Rafah invasion, on May 9th, Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu published his first response to Biden's ultimatum. In a video message, he stated that on the eve of Israel's Independence Day, 76 years ago, there was a weapons embargo on Israel, but Israel prevailed due to strength of will and unity, adding that Israel is stronger today and, quote, "If we have to stand alone, we will stand alone. I've said it already, we will fight with our bare hands if we have to, but we have much more than our bare hands, and with the same strength of will, we will prevail." Netanyahu is referring to Israel's War of Independence in 1948, when there was a weapons embargo. He is saying that the situation, even then with the weapons embargo, Israel managed to prevail. The United States has not declared a weapons embargo on Israel by any means. However, he is linking that in order to say Israel can stand alone if it has to. Alongside these statements, CNN reported on May 9th that the Israeli War Cabinet was having an emergency meeting in order to discuss the armament situation in Israel in light of the developments with the United States, seemingly trying to calculate how Israel is going to continue its armament supply if the United States does in fact start suspending the shipment of offensive weapons. Alongside all this, it is also important to note that in the last several days, several analysts and commentators have stated that Hamas has been progressively dispersing its fighting units in Rafah, and that of the 4 established battalions in the city that the IDF said it is coming to destroy, likely only 2 remain active, and the fighters of the other 2 battalions have meanwhile dispersed to different places. Hamas is trying, according to the reports, to conserve its forces, and the fighting units have moved towards Han Yunis as part of the civilians who are evacuating, or to the central camps of the Gaza Strip, where the IDF has not carried out any ground invasion yet. The 2 remaining battalions are likely concentrated in the western parts of the city, near the Tel Sultan refugee camp. This is the area immediately south of the El Mwasi refugee camp, which is the main humanitarian zone in the Gaza Strip. If this is true, that means that Hamas is already preparing for the IDF invasion, and rather than trying to tackle the IDF invasion head-on and stop it, it is actually trying to just conserve its forces for when the IDF pulls out of Rafah after the invasion, like it has done in other parts of the Gaza Strip, that the forces can then regroup yet again. Amidst all this, the UN has estimated that over 110,000 Palestinians have evacuated Rafah in the last several days. Satellite images were also published showing this mass evacuation. Regarding casualties, 4 IDF soldiers were reported killed in the Gaza Strip since my last report 2 days ago, bringing the total number of IDF soldiers killed in the Gaza Strip since the invasion began to 271. 42 IDF soldiers were reported injured in the Gaza Strip in the last 2 days, bringing the total number of IDF soldiers injured in the Gaza Strip since the invasion began to 1,652. The Palestinian Health Ministry in the Gaza Strip is reporting that 99 Palestinians were killed in the Gaza Strip since my last report 2 days ago, bringing the total number of Palestinians killed in the Gaza Strip since the war began to 34,943. 78,572 Palestinians reported injured in the Gaza Strip since the war began. I remind everyone that in the last estimates that the IDF published, it stated that between 12,000 and 13,000 armed Palestinians of Hamas and the Palestinian Islamic Jihad were killed in the Gaza Strip, which is likely 12 or 13,000 of those 34,943. It is also important to note, however, that the IDF has not put out any updated numbers in the last month. Moving on to the humanitarian situation in the Gaza Strip. Responding to the closure of the Rafah crossing as a result of the IDF takeover since May 6th, on May 10th, the United States urged Israel to open the crossing, stating that its closure is only going to contribute to more suffering in the Gaza Strip. According to reports in Israel, Israel plans on handing over control of the crossing to a private security company in the United States that specializes in war zones. However, it was not reported if the plan is to do this during the war, or if this is going to happen only after the war is over or some sort of ceasefire is declared. Other news related to the humanitarian situation, members of the Tzav 9 movement, this is a movement that's trying to block humanitarian aid from entering the Gaza Strip in Israel, blocked trucks that are making their way from Jordan to the Gaza Strip on May 10th, specifically in the area of Mitzpeh Ramon. In one case, shown in the pictures here, protesters deployed boulders and stones along the road, holding up trucks for several hours. This may have contributed to the lesser amount of aid trucks that entered the Gaza Strip on May 10th. Total 76 aid trucks were reported entering the Gaza Strip on May 10th. In addition, 117 aid containers were paradropped in the northern parts of the Gaza Strip between May 9th and May 10th, containing thousands of aid packages of food, water, medical supplies, and shelters. Moving on to the northern parts of Israel, southern parts of Lebanon, there's continuing and expanding escalations between the IDF and Hezbollah in the last several days. On May 9th, there was a drone attack launched by Hezbollah towards the areas of Shlomi in the northern parts of Israel, and substantial barrages of rockets were fired towards the Upper Galilee and Western Galilee, including the firing of Burstein missiles. The Saudi Al Hadath reported that Hezbollah drones and missiles targeted an IDF base in the area of Tzfat, and that some of them hit the base. This was not reported by the IDF or in Israel. On May 10th, the barrages of rockets continued and escalated, with one barrage of 35 rockets fired towards Kiryat Shmona, causing major fires to break out along the mountainous ridge. These are some of the videos and pictures that emerged from the scene, where firefighters continued to try and stop the fires before they reached the town and neighboring areas. In addition to this, anti-tank missiles were also reported throughout the day, fired towards the areas of Kfar Yuval and Misgav Am. Regarding IDF activity, on May 9th, Hezbollah structures and infrastructure were targeted in the areas of the Kila village, Al-Mash'ab, and Yarun, and it was also reported that the IDF carried out a targeted attack against a car in the area of Tzur, assassinating 4 Hezbollah operatives. Specific identities were not mentioned, however Sky News in Arabic did report that some of these were field commanders of Hezbollah. On May 10th, following the barrages that were fired, the IDF launched a string of attacks throughout southern Lebanon, destroying at least 5 Hezbollah structures and attacking targets in the areas of El Adaisa, El Khiyam, Rav al-Thalathin, Dir Sira, Ita Ash'ab, and Mehihav. Right now, the situation between the sides is still escalating. The diplomatic efforts that were reported by France and by the U.S. Special Envoy to the region, Amos Hochstein, seem to have been forgotten at the moment. Possibly they will re-engage in the coming days. However, once again, this is very tied to the ongoing negotiations between Israel and Hamas. As long as that area is not de-escalate, Hezbollah has pledged that they are not going to honor any diplomatic resolution that may be reached between the countries. Some political news for the last several days, and I'm starting with a political report that is very likely associated with the Biden administration's ultimatum to Israel with regards to the Rafah invasion. On May 10th, the U.S. State Department submitted its first report to Congress regarding Israel's use of U.S. weapons in the war, with a report indicating that, quote, it is likely that Israel used U.S. weapons in violation of international law in the Gaza Strip. The report adds that several critical notes about Israel's conduct, including that Israel did not share all information with the United States in order to ensure what weaponry was used in specific incidents, adding that while evidence is lacking, there is reasonable evidence to suggest that violation of international law did take place. In addition, the report adds that the assurances that Israel gave to the United States that the weapons will only be used in accordance with international law are credible assurances, and the report adds that the evidence accumulated does not require the United States to limit the transfer of weaponry to Israel. Other political news. On May 10th, the United Nations General Assembly passed a resolution granting the Palestinian delegation to the UN additional rights and recognition. The vote passed with an overwhelming majority of 143 to 9, after it was downgraded from the Palestinian request to be accepted as a voting member, and instead it was granted additional prestige and more authority as a near-state member. Among others, the new position allows the Palestinian delegation to be seated among the world's states in alphabetical order, to register for debates even if it has nothing to do with the Palestinian cause, to speak on behalf of a regional bloc, to present decisions and amendments, to second amendments, propose agendas, be part of committees, participate in international forums, have the right of response, the right of explanation, and the right to propose procedural issues. Essentially, this grants the delegation most of the rights that states have, except for the right to actually vote in the United Nations. In addition, as I suggested would likely be the case in my last report, on May 10th, South Africa appealed to the International Court of Justice in light of the IDF's invasion of Rafah, asking the court to issue emergency injunctions ordering Israel to stop its military activities in the Gaza Strip. Some reports relating to the future of the Gaza Strip. Speaking in an interview with Dr. Phil on May 9th, Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu referred to the future of the Gaza Strip, stating, and I quote, "There will have to be some sort of civilian government in Gaza, consisting of people who do not seek Israel's destruction. It may be with the help of the United Arab Emirates or others who are interested in peace and stability in the region." He also added that this will happen alongside Israel's continuous fight against terror in the area. This is indicating Netanyahu's vision that Israel will maintain security control, but civilian control will be handed over to another body in the Gaza Strip. Responding to this, on May 10th, the United Arab Emirates Foreign Ministry put out a statement stating that they were not consulted about this, that Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu has no legitimate authority to call upon other actors to participate in the governing bodies of the Gaza Strip, and that the UAE does not plan on participating in this body unless it is done with the cooperation and agreement of the Palestinians. If you find these summaries informative, please do remember to hit that like button, subscribe, turn on notifications if you want to know when reports come out. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them in the comment section below. Those are my highlights from the last several days. Thanks for watching.